If I if I sing and you got to preach, it's gonna be short, isn't it? Let's. Got anybody up the stairs? Oh, there he is. Let's praise for the Lord. Let's start with 583. Sing to me of heaven. Boy, this thing sounds really loud. It, yeah. Got a sign from above that said, I don't know if that was a prophecy. Tell you what, let's see if we got enough books. The praise to the Lord. You can, see if you can find one in front, behind, beside. You may have to share with somebody you don't like. 583. I think we know this pretty well. Okay, we'll do the first and last. Let's all sing.
Good evening. I'm going to once again try and stay rooted for you all. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but we'll try. Today, we're going to be focusing on Acts chapter 15 and Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. So if you want to know where we're going to be the majority of the time, that is where we're going to be. So, a little bit about myself before we really kick this off. Jesus, Lord for settling problems. That is a topic that Ron bestowed upon me, that I was blessed with. I still think it's personal. I still think that he's leaving me for last. But luckily, I was able to get a good one this time. No, it's always a pleasure. I love the summer series. It gives us an opportunity to hear from a lot of different people. Unfortunately, you have someone here this evening that you know very well, so you don't get a fresh perspective. But hopefully, this is one of those things that's a refresher for us, that takes us back to the beginning, the origin of the church, and the importance of conflict, the role that it played in the formation of it. I remember when I was a child, conflict was difficult for me. As a matter of fact, it still is difficult for me. But I could still remember the feeling, the desire to avoid, the desire to run away, the desire to dissociate, to go within myself in moments of great stress and great conflict. And then I had the opportunity to go to college, and you think going to somewhere like Faulkner University, you know everyone's of like mind, everyone's thinking the same thing, but really it's not. I'd never been so surprised to see how many different perspectives there were at the university. Not saying it's necessarily a negative thing, because it challenged me. It forced me to ask myself a lot of questions, and it rooted me, I believe, in my faith. I remember it like it was yesterday. I had ran into a group of guys, got really close with them, and at that point in my spiritual journey, I was visiting. I was trying to figure out, where I wanted to attend while I was there for the 4 years. Was I going to go to university, or was I going to go to Eastern Meadows? These are all the different congregations that were in the area. There was, I think, like 7 or 8, if I remember. They were pretty big congregations. Well, I remember I was like, I'll give Landmark a try. And I had never, I did not know what I was expecting. I'll just put it there. Some of their belief systems are different than ours, different from what Scripture is rooted in. And in that moment, I wanted to run away. That feeling of just wanting to just throw in the towel and, not have the conversation and not ask the questions, that was strong. But I'm happy I didn't. I stayed, and I had the opportunity to ask my friends questions. Why did they go here? What was the reason for this? And a lot of those conversations was quite tense. And why am I bringing this up? Why am I bringing up these tense conversations with my friends, with my brothers? Well, because what I ended up learning is that Christ gives us the map. Christ gives us the principles. He lays them out, and how we are to deal with that conflict. So I was so frazzled and I was so worried about dropping the ball that I didn't realize that I was focusing way too much on myself during these conflicts and what I believed and what I thought, and rather really just trying to get back to the Word. And I noticed when I did those things, when I focused on settling problems that were, the foundation was found in the Word, I found great relief, great reprieve. Now, let's look at Acts chapter 15. While we're looking at the idea of conflict, settling problems, I want to ask you all a couple questions. How many of you have ever been hurt by someone? Now here's the hard one. How many of you have hurt someone? This one was a really hard one for me to sit with. And as a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with my wife, and we were walking through how difficult it is to not be the hero in your own journey. To not think, oh, and I told you guys I don't really view myself that way, but it's very easy to still slip into, no, they're wrong and I'm right. There's no way that, if we're not careful. We have to be cognizant that we might be the one doing the hurting as well. Acts 15, we see 3 conflicts take place. Now, I want you guys to ask yourself something. When you were reading Acts chapter 15, if you've read it before, did anyone ever notice Christ, God, the apostles demonize conflict or settling problems? Anyone notice that? I didn't. Not once through these conflicts did I see there any indication that having conflict is wrong. Yet, I have to ask, why is it you see less of it in the church? Do we not know congregations that are struggling? Are we not struggling in certain areas? Where are the conversations? We're worried about so many things. We're fearful of how we're going to be perceived, who's going to be sued, what's going to happen if, say, we decide to have this conflict. How is that going to end? And we're so worried about that we don't have the conflict at all. That's concerning, because it leaves a lot of room for poison to settle. Now, Acts chapter 15, let's look at the first problem that's being settled here. Acts chapter 15, verse 2 says this: Therefore, when Paul and Barnabas had no small dissension and dispute with them, they determined that Paul and Barnabas and certain others of them should go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and elders about the question. So, problems in the church are normal. We know that. The other thing is this, okay? The apostles were having this conflict with those that believe that the Gentiles, they should be circumcised too. They should have to go through that process. We went through that process. They should have to do that too, right? But interestingly enough, we see something unfold. if we move on into verse 3, it says, "So being sent on their way by the church, they passed through Phoenicia and Samaria, describing the conversion of the Gentiles, and they caused great joy to all the brethren." So Paul is trying to establish the Gentiles are a part of us now. They're equal with us. And then it goes on and it says, "And when they had come to Jerusalem," verse 4, "they were received by the church and the apostles and the elders." So the apostles were having this conflict with those that believed that the Gentiles should be circumcised. What was the next step? Oh, they went to the elders. Because in verse 6 it says specifically, "Now the apostles and the elders came together to consider the matter." Now in verse 7 we see another layer. And that is the disagreement between not just Paul and the people that believed in Gentiles being circumcised, but also the elders. Paul rose up and said to them, "Men and brethren, you know that a good while ago God chose among us that by my mouth the Gentiles should hear the word of the gospel and believe." There's two. Here's the third one. This one's fun. We see in verse 39 the fallout between Paul and Barnabas. Now, if you know anything about the relationship of Paul and Barnabas, we know that they were close. I've discussed this before, right? I've discussed that Barnabas was an encourager. He was someone that had Paul's back. Now, we're seeing that they're having a falling out. Because Barnabas wants to take John Mark, and Paul is like, wait a second. John Mark didn't do this work. Because he's wanting to go to all the congregations around the area. He's wanting to visit them. He didn't do that. He left. I don't want to do this. It got so bad they split. Let's read verse 39. "Then the contention became so sharp that they parted from one another. And so Barnabas took Mark and sailed to Cyprus." Here's the wild thing to me. So we're talking about never is it demonized. Never is it looked at as bad that they're having these conflicts. In verse 40, it says, "But Paul chose Silas and departed, being commended," not shunned, "being commended by the brethren to the grace of God." So they went their own way because of how sharp this disagreement was. But they were still giving God the glory. They still went and served him. So the conflict is not the problem. Okay? Now, if these apostles are having issues, what makes us think that we're any different? I'm almost sure I've told you guys about this, but when I'm encountering children in play therapy, it could be real easy to get wrapped up in they're doing the same thing. Because I don't know, I think everyone in here has had kids and or been around kids. I can assume that. They're pretty repetitious sometimes. It can be pretty daunting because they want to do the same thing. My son thought it was the funniest thing that I was taking a cup and I was making fart noises and pushing the water fountain. He thought that was the funniest thing. I just kept doing it. He just giggling, cackling. I probably did it about 30 times. I had to empty the cup and put more in. I don't know. He's 3. He just wants to do the same thing. What I've observed, though, and what I had the pleasure of a mentor telling me, is just not about the behavior, so to speak, but how they perform it. Our children, when they're engaging in learning the world around them, sometimes when they're doing things 50 times, we can forget. We're not paying attention, and we don't see the subtleties. And that's the beauty of conflict. Is you see, sometimes we're so worried about having the conflict because, we've had it, but we've had it 50 times. And I've seen relationships and what it does to them. But we don't pay attention to when we have that conflict, what happens after? That building of trust, that building of rapport, that idea that, hey, this is something that's wrong and we're going to stand for this. That's one of the things that sets us apart. But when you don't have those conversations, it's quite dangerous. It's far worse. Right? If I didn't let the child process that same thing in play therapy, then what you'll find is, if I don't let them do the thing the 50th time, is they start to stagnate. They start to feel dysregulated. You start to see that in the playroom, and you start to see that outside of it. It's called interrupted play. And I believe one of the important aspects of play in childhood development is being able to argue. How often when we see siblings engaging in an argument, we go, no, stop. Don't talk to her that way. Don't do that. Don't take that thing. But in that conflict, they're learning so many things. Look, and I'm definitely someone that wants to do that. When I see my 3-year-old, especially when you're playing with an 8-month-old that really can't do much, you're like, I just want to jump in at every turn. But even at those ages, there's still opportunity for them to learn within that conflict. I'm not telling you to let your kids beat each other up, but I am saying it's helpful for them to learn how to argue, to learn how to be told no, to learn how to figure out how to share, to learn how to figure out how to solve a problem together, right? If they're arguing over the TV remote and you're always stepping in, then guess what? They're always going to argue about the TV remote, and they're going to get married, and they're going to argue about the same little things because they never had the opportunity to go, you know what? I'm going to fight, and then at the end, you know what? You have it this time. I'll take it the next time. That's the conclusion, but that happens after 100 times of you just letting them do it. Where is that in the church? I'm not saying it's not present, please. I'm not saying that that's not. I'm just asking where. And if it comes up that it's not, that's something we need to work on. It's not something we need to avoid. It's not something we need to find 50 other things to fix and to do. We need to focus on that. Why are we not having the conflict here? Okay. We talked about problems in the church, the normalization of that they happen. You cannot avoid that. We see that when the church is first being established, right? 'Cause that's what Acts is. Now, the next thing is, what's the 2 enemies of resolution? I kind of mentioned them a little bit at the beginning. One is fear, and one is pride. I want to tell you guys a story about a bully, okay? Now, if I'm talking too much, you let me know, okay? I'll stop. We can end early if you'd like. I want to tell you a story about a bully. So there's this child. and he goes to school, and he is berating these kids. He is he's beating them up. He's saying mean things like, you're not going to be a thing. You're nothing. You're good for nothing. You're not smart. You're dumb. And he's saying that. He's picking on these kids all day long. Now, if I just stopped there, you'd go, oh, that guy's terrible. That kid, that's nasty. I don't want to be around that kid. We probably experienced that kid. Some of us have probably been that kid. You know what I've had the pleasure of observing? Is the other side of that story. You see that same kid, pompous, with his chest up. You would think he had no fear. That same kid calling other kids good for nothing. As he walks to school, his shoulders drop. His chest sinks in. As he inches, the fear builds. He walks in the door, and he hopes he hears, it's good to see you, son. I've missed you. But instead he hears, you're good for nothing. Where have you been? You're not going to amount to anything. The same things that he's saying to these kids, oftentimes that's an indication of a lack of control, of fear, of pride, prideful nature. Because what's fear? What is it? Fear is just, it's avoidance. And what's pride? It's the appearance of strength, but it's isolation. See, when I'm working with someone and they come in and they're like, I do so good at this, I'm so great at this, and what do you think? This is cool, isn't it? I immediately know you're isolating yourself. You want me to see a perception of yourself. You don't want me to see the hurt. And that's a hard thing to sit with. The problem with resolution that you're facing, I am facing in the church, is we are afraid. We are afraid of how we are going to be perceived. We are afraid of what's going to happen. We're going to be hurt. We're going to be looked at a certain way. That we're going to be isolated. And let me tell you, you're right. You probably will be isolated. Who cares? We're doing the right thing. When you see something that is wrong, you can sit and you can worry and you can worry and you can worry until you're sitting 5 years later and you're wondering, what happened? Well, you did nothing. You saw the thing and you didn't do a thing about it. You just sat there. Pride. If I can't solve it, nobody can. So you're thinking, okay, this is an issue that I'm experiencing in the church. If I can't figure it out, no one can. So I'm not even going to try and collaborate. I'm not going to have a conflict. I don't know anything about it, so we probably shouldn't talk about it. Which is the opposite. Now, I don't want to rag fear and pride too much, because I think there's positives for fear. There's a healthy fear. Being selective about who you trust. I think that's a pretty healthy version of fear. I didn't say being selective about who you love. I said who you trust. Okay? That's two different things. You can still love someone, but we're still told at some point or another, which I want you, while we're talking about this, Matthew 18. Turn to Matthew 18. okay? There is a point in which you are told you can dust off your feet. Do not cast your pearls before swine. There are points in which that is the case. That is fair. But if we are not going through these processes, if we are allowing the enemies of resolution to set in, and we're not doing this process, we're not doing it Jesus' way. I'm just going to let you know. Let's look at the way that Jesus laid it out for the church. Matthew 18. We're going to look at verse 15, I believe. Verse 15. Moreover, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. Okay, wait a second. Does he say, if your brother wrongs you, hey, you know, Ron really upset me? It's probably the opposite. If Ron really upset me, you know, I'm going to go talk about it with Cindy. Yeah. And the excuse is, I need to get it off my chest. It's so overwhelming. I don't want to offend him. You know, I don't want to hurt his feelings. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to go talk to Rick about it. I'm just getting advice. And somehow, all these excuses lead to no conversation with Ron. It's baffling. Now, I'm chucking boulders at you, and that's okay. Because I'm also aware that I struggle with the same thing. That I too have participated in that. And that is why I'm telling you this. It's because I know I'm sick of it. I know I'm sick of being part of that dynamic. If you have an issue with someone, talk to that person. Is it going to be hard? Is it going to create conflict? Will they probably not like what you're saying? Sure. Most likely what's going to happen is, most of the time, is enough of that conflict happening between the individual, done the way that Christ set it out. The more of that happens, the more trust is built. Because instead of me talking about Ron to someone else, or talking about Ivan to someone else, I'm talking to those individuals. So those individuals automatically know, if there's a problem, Felix is going to come to me. He's not going to go to someone else. He's going to shoot straight with me. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He's not going to try to make me feel good. And those are the people that, even if you don't like it at first and it makes you really uncomfortable, those are the people that for some reason we like to be around. Isn't that kind of wild? Like we're drawn to those people. As irritating as they can be sometimes. You're like, go ahead, tell me. That is my wife. I'm just going to say it. That's my wife for me. She was quite hurtful when we were dating. But it was necessary. Because you know what else it told me? She cared about me enough to tell me the truth. I don't think that I'd be half the man, more so, if it wasn't for someone like her saying, I'm just going to tell you the truth. No matter how much conflict, upsets, arguments, she told me the truth. Now, the next thing, if you go to that individual and they're not listening and they're being hard-headed, Ron, and they're being hard-headed, again, I'm aware I'm the hard-headed one in this story, okay? They're being difficult. It's fine. If he doesn't want to hear, that's one thing. But if he hears, you've gained a brother. So it automatically tells us that trust, all these things I'm talking about, you gain a brother. But if he will not hear, take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. So that doesn't mean take 2 with you so you can jump this guy. That's not what I'm saying. No one think that it's okay to jump Ron. That's not what we're doing here. Okay? That also doesn't mean to take those 2 people and then those 2 people think it's okay to talk about that situation with another 2 to 10 to 20 people. That's not what that's about either. But see, I know for a fact that you worry about that. I know for a fact. But that's for accountability. Okay? Not ammunition, accountability. Now the next part. And if he, this is verse 17, if he refuses to hear them, tell it to the church. But if he refuses even to hear the church, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. So do you keep tolerating it? Am I telling you to just keep? Okay, we're going to have conflict and I want you to continue to get hurt. Am I saying that? No. Not all of you at once. No, I'm not saying that. You cannot maintain healthy relationships that way. You will not build a healthy congregation, a sound congregation. You're not going to build one by continuing to beat your head against the same wall. Now, for the sake of not doing that myself, what's the point? I said it before, I'll say it again. You're not shamed for discussion. If you are, that's on the individual shaming you. Everyone had a part in these confrontations. There was no one that couldn't sit at the table and speak up. Paul talked. Barnabas talked. The elders talked. Guess who else talked? Those that thought that the Gentiles should be circumcised. They got an opportunity to talk too. Even if in the end of the chapter, okay, I'm spoiling it a little bit, they were told, we're not going to hold them to that standard because we couldn't even live up to that standard. So why are you trying to push this on them? Why are you trying to push circumcision on the Gentiles if we could not live up to that? That's why Christ had to come. So, everyone has a role. Everyone should have an opportunity to speak on things that they're observing that's going to move us forward. Now, when was the last time we used this process? Was there anything that we maybe didn't do or we did do? Because those are valuable things to consider. Did we take one of those steps and manipulate it to make us feel better? Did we change something up? What was the outcome? What is the outcome if you all have had the opportunity to watch this process go to fruition? What's the outcome of that? What does that look like? I'll tell you, the times it's actually played out, those relationships are super healthy. I know of several people that I'm thinking about right now that when we've gone through that process, it's worked out. I'm not saying it works out every time, because sometimes it doesn't. The Bible tells us that sometimes it doesn't, but we're still called to do it. No matter how you feel about it. Now, keep doing the work. Keep teaching. Keep preaching. It says in Mark, let me see here. Why am I losing my place? It's Mark 16, yep. Mark 16. Verse 15, it says what? Go into all the world, preaching and teaching. That's what Paul did. Let's see here. I'm going to do a sidetrack here. Let's look at 2 Timothy 4:11. Really quick. So it says go into all the world. In reference to Jesus being the Lord for settling problems, let's look at 2 Timothy. It says in chapter 4, verse 11, only Luke is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you, for he is useful to me for the ministry. Useful to me for ministry, for service. So even after the conflict that happened between Paul and Barnabas, because of John Mark, and Paul not wanting to bring him, what do we see in the end? He says, bring him, he's useful. We see Barnabas and Paul mend their relationship. In later writings, we see Paul give praise to Barnabas. So we see, even though that contention was strong, he praises Barnabas for the servant that he is. So even if we're having conflict with someone right now, we're still meant to love each other and continue the work. If this conflict is getting in the way of you doing the work, that's a problem that needs to be addressed. Now, before we end, I want us to look at Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. So when I was thinking about conflict, I was asking myself questions like, when was the last time a conflict consumed me so completely that I stopped doing what God called me to do? Carrying out the Great Commission, holding a grudge. And I thought of a poem. Yes, you can laugh at me later for writing poetry. But I wrote a poem to for my son about how easy it is to slip into work. And I don't think work is bad. I think it's good. I don't see myself retiring, just prefacing that comment about how easy it is to slip into work and neglect our kids. How easy it is to forget that he is my responsibility, my opportunity, my reason. And I just drown in it. And the point is that as a father's responsibility is his son, is his daughter, as a husband's responsibility is to his wife, a mother's to their children. Our responsibility as Christians is to be faithful, is to serve him, to fulfill the mission, to spread the gospel. Now, if any of you are having any conflict, if any of you feel like you're falling short, feel like the conflict is just too difficult for us to manage or to approach, remember this. Isaiah 59 says, "Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened, that it cannot save, nor his ear heavy, that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have separated you from your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he will not hear." Jesus is the Lord for settling problems. That's why he gave us the roadmap. That's why he laid out the principles. It's because we sin. We fall short. I sin. You sin. And this is a chance to encourage and to sharpen. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever seen a blade sharpened, it does not look pleasant. Right? It's gritty. There's sparks flying. Sometimes that happens. But what comes of that? Sharpness, wisdom, knowledge, camaraderie, wholeness. So that's what I want you guys to think about this evening, for the rest of the week. The same wall that conflict builds between people, sin builds between us and God. And Jesus didn't give us a process for settling problems. He didn't just do that. No, he settled the ultimate problem between us and the Father by his blood. If Jesus is Lord, he's Lord over your conflicts too. The question is, will you let him be? Jesus didn't just give us principles, he gave us the opportunity of reconciliation. So this evening, if you see an area in your life where we're avoiding, we're being prideful, we're not having the conflict, this is your opportunity. Don't wait. Jump. Just jump. Confess. Maybe you're the one that we need to start the process of trusting one another again, to be there, to have the conflict. If you want to be a part of the congregation, part of the church, well, we'd love to have that conversation as well. Even if that comes with arguments, that's okay too. Please come, Father, that these things are applicable to you. We stand and sing the song of invitation.